Welcome to our channel by Gulab Sir for Wisdom Coaching Center. As a part of series of lecture, today's topic is blood coagulation and lymph. As we know that at the site of injury that blood ooze out and it not stop till that clotting means coagulation of blood occur at the site of injury. We all had an experience that when we have इंजरी दैट ब्लड स्टार्ट ओजिंग आउट, ब्लड निकलना शुरू हो जाता है और कुछ देर के बाद वो स्टॉप हो जाता है अपने आप. दैट प्रोसेस ऑफ स्टॉपिंग ब्लड इज बिकॉज ऑफ फॉर्मेशन ऑफ कोएगुलम एट द साइट ऑफ इंजरी एंड दैट इज व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू लर्न. इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक बिकॉज इट कंसर्न विद अस, ऑल ऑफ अस. सो कोएगुलेशन ऑफ ब्लड. At the site of injury, when blood ooze out, come out, there, as we already discussed, as a part of composition of blood, blood consists of platelets, also known as thromboplastin. These platelets, they get ruptured. Platelets, also known as thromboplastin. Thrombocytes, also known as thrombocytes. These platelets are known as thrombocytes. They get ruptured. At the site of injury or cut. When they get ruptured at the site of injury, they releases an enzyme called thrombokinase. They release enzyme called thrombokinase. This thrombokinase is also known as thromboplastin. Now this thrombokinase which released at the site of injury when it ruptured, that convert that inactive plasma protein called prothrombin is present in blood plasma into active form called thrombin. Now as soon as thrombin is produced, this active thrombin act on plasma soluble protein or soluble protein in plasma called fibrinogen into insoluble form called fibrin, and these fibrins they get converted into that what they form the mesh around that wound or cut part, and since this mesh is formed, that formed element, that is blood cells, dead blood cells at the site of injury, they get attacked into this net, and that what oozing out blood gets stopped. So see, these are the factors. Total 13 factors are involved in the process of blood coagulation. Out of that, this thrombokinase is a third factor. Prothrombin is a second factor and fibrinogen is a first factor. Calcium acts as a cofactor. Along with thrombokinase, it is a fourth factor. So this has to be remembered. Out of that 13 factor, 4 factor I have mentioned here, that they are required for the process of coagulation. Now these 13 factor together is called as cascade of enzyme, that is called basket of enzyme. All these factors are required for the coagulation of blood are mentioned on net in this chart. So see, this chart is given here. These are the total 13 factors. Right from the 13th, that is called fibrin stabilizing factor, to first factor, that what I already mentioned here, that first factor is fibrinogen. There you can have a look. That first factor is fibrinogen. These are required as an extrinsic and intrinsic factor together to cause the blood coagulation. So Any one of these is, if it is absent, that coagulation blood do not occur. And therefore, all this cascade of enzyme, one after the other, in a sequence, work or function to have immediate effect after few minutes that or few seconds, that blood gets stopped. So that process of conversion of that liquid blood into solid part is called as blood coagulation or clotting of blood, where that oozing of blood is stopped. Clotting of blood. So what we have to remember as a part of syllabus, what is mentioned, what is biocoagulation? That formation of coagulum at the site of injury to stop the oozing of blood is known as blood clotting. This process is explained as follows, that at the site of injury, that platelets or thrombocytes get ruptured. That ruptured thrombocytes release an enzyme called thrombokinase, is a third factor, also known as thromboplastin. These catalyze the process of conversion of soluble prothrombin in inactive protein in presence of cofactor, that calcium, that is a fourth factor, to convert into thrombin. And further, this thrombin act on fibrinogen, that is a soluble plasma protein converted into fibrin called fibers, can be called as a fibers, and these fibers form the mesh around that injury so that dead RBCs or dead blood cells or form element, they get attached into the mesh and stop the oozing of blood, and that process is known as clotting of blood. In diabetic person, because of that more water contained inside the blood to maintain the osmotic concentration because of more solid concentration, that process of coagulation delayed or late, or by the time when the person get operated, there may be chances of having more blood loss, and therefore doctor used to test sugar test and advise you that not to eat anything before having operation as to maintain or to prevent the process of oozing of blood. So this is very important to understand, that the process of coagulation, how it occur. Now is important as equal as this process, this 13 factor, that some of the factor can be asked in NEET. Christmas factor, very often it is asked. Christmas factor is also known as plasma thromboplastin component. That number of Christmas factor is 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. So 9 or 9 factor involved in blood coagulation is A, B, C, D. Out of these 4, you have to take Christmas factor. Then another factor, that Hagman factor, is also very often asked. So it is not as given by Hagman, but it is a 10th factor, Stewart factor, and not given. Okay, so Stewart factor, that 10th factor is given. Yes, Hagman factor is also given. It is a 12th factor. So question can be asked that Hagman factor is 11th, 12th, 13th, 10th. So that's what we have to remember. Or 12th factor which involved in the blood coagulation is any out of these 4 will be given. You have to take the Hagman factor. So you remember please this as a list of that factor is given. Here as I explained, this chart also is shown that fibrin is formed by fibrinogen with the action of thrombin. Thrombin is formed from prothrombin from that thromboplastin or thrombokinase enzyme. Include third, this 10th and 5th factor also involved. So 10 factor, this 10 factor altogether 9 factor, 7 factor, second 9 factor, 11 factor, 11 factor, 12 factor and 13, that is a fibrin stabilizing factor. These chart need not to prepare at your level, but at least have a look on this factor, how this factor altogether work, and this list of the 13 factor. And very important is that this short process which explained in your book can be asked. Write short note on blood coagulation. Explaining all these things will be count for 2 marks, as well as in NEET question can be asked. So concentrate, the question which can be asked in NEET are this: what is first factor, what is second factor, what is third factor, and what is fourth factor. So I hope you did understand this process of coagulation. And as a part of video, next topic is lymph. Now lymph is a extracellular fluid. What is it? It is a extracellular fluid. That means it is in the gap between tissue. it squeeze out from blood. So plasma squeeze out from blood. Plasma squeeze out from blood vessels. But which component of plasma? Part of the plasma. Instead of saying part of the plasma, that squeeze out from the blood vessel containing water and water soluble component. Water and water soluble components. Except some protein. Except protein and formed element such as RBC, WBC, platelet is known as lymph. So this is the definition of lymph. What lymph is? Lymph is colorless. Lymph is colorless, or sometimes it appears straw color, hay color, having lymphocyte in it. Having lymphocytes. These lymphocytes are the immunocells. They are the type of WBCs. They can be T lymphocyte, B lymphocytes, and helper T cell. Helper T cell, killer T cell, suppressor T cell. These lymphocytes provide immunity. They provide immunity. And this lymph that flow in the gap of tissue, organ and organ system. So that gap is irregular and is known as lymph vessels. These lymph vessels is also known as lacteals. These lymph vessels also known as lacteals. Now, this is what about that lymph composition and where it flow, what it composed of. Naturally, that I said that except protein and formed element means water and water soluble component of blood. All that what we learn in composition of blood, that you know, glucose, amino acid, bicarbonates, sodium, chloride, magnesium, calcium, that what we already learned about. So that what content is lymph. The functions of the lymph is that lymph carry fats and fat soluble vitamins, from digestive tract, because fat and fat soluble vitamins are diffused into lymph vessels and transfer to the cells of the body. These fat soluble vitamins are A, D, E and K. Please remember, this can be asked in NEET, that what are fat soluble vitamins. So A, D, E and K. As well as this lymph also carry hormones and enzymes. Very important that lymph along with this vitamin A, D, E and K has lymphocytes that provide, we already discussed lymphocytes that provide immunity. So lymph has major role to provide the immunity and carry vitamin, water, fat soluble vitamin A, D, E and K, as well as that hormones and enzymes which are present in. So lymph also secretes and allowed to exchange. This is the medium to exchange nutrients between blood vessel and tissue, that is from nutrients from exchange or transfer. Instead of saying to transfer nutrients from blood to tissue, and transfer of waste, that is metabolic waste, from tissue to blood vessel for its excretion, to blood for its excretion. That is what nitrogenous waste which transfer to the kidney to excrete out. So these are the functions of the lymph. Can be asked for 2 mark, write any 4 functions of the lymph, or can be asked in NEET that lymph is the medium to transfer. So what is supposed to transfer, and that is what we mention here clearly. So these components are transferred by lymph as it present between the gap of the blood and tissue. So exchange of these things. In short, already I wrote there exchange, but write it separately. Nutrient transfer from blood to tissue and waste from tissue to blood. Otherwise, we can use your word that exchange of nutrients and waste material between blood and tissue. So to complete that sentence or function. Okay, so this was the composition of the blood, composition of the lymph, where it flow, what is it, and what are its function. I hope you did understand these 2 small topic belong to this chapter, circulatory system. So even if you are in doubt, you can ask in comment section. I appeal you to like our channel and subscribe it. Also to press the bell icon to receive new videos as and when they are uploaded. Thank you.